Yo guys, I'm Niek from the Produce School, and today we're going to dive into the minimal groovy style of Chris Stussy. Known for his energetic grooves, Chris Stussy is one of the fastest rising house artists of the moment. He's currently selling out shows in Miami and headlining big festivals like Digital in Amsterdam. He really knows how to get a crowd going, and today we're going to explore all of his signature sounds. In this video I will cover all the main elements like the bass, the groove and the leads, and without further ado, let's now dive straight into the video. Alright, so I'm here in Avail Studio, and the first thing you want to do is set your BPM to 130, which is relatively fast for house, but that also really resonates with the sound and the groove of Chris Stussy's tracks. Then there will be a few approaches that you can use, and in this case I'm going to start with the sub-bass element. So right here I have this sound from our Dimension sample pack, which is called Bass Impress. The sound is really simple, just two Juno wavetables without any voices of unison and a pretty long envelope 1. However, the punch of this sound comes from envelope 2, which is linked to the MG-Low 18 filter. And you can hear the difference when I bypass it. It sounds like this. So then it's that really subby sound, but if you want to keep some of that punch, you can use a short envelope like this to the filter, and you immediately get that fuller sound. Together with some distortion, you're ready to go, and you want to dive into the next part, which is creating a groovy bass line. So I came up with the bass line, and that sounds like this. As you can see and hear, it's definitely not following a standard chord pattern, but it's rather just jumping between notes, creating a very groovy sound. If you want to check the groove, it's really easy to just put on your metronome, and then you will immediately get a better idea on how it will sound with a 4/4 house kick. So a lot of offbeat hits, a lot of changes between notes, which makes it a really groovy bass line to begin with. To make it even more groovy, you can go here into your pattern section and give your project some swing. This is the main swing button, and I would suggest to put it to 30 or 40% to really get that swingy sound. So then it will sound like this. Very subtle, however just a little bit more groovy when you layer it with the other elements like the kick, etc. later on. Now you want to find a sound which has a fifth in it, which you can use as a supporting bass layer, basically complementing the groove of your main sub bass. So I found this bass, which is just from the factory bank of Diva, and I did some small adjustments, like I gave it a bit more release, turned down the sustain, and added a bit more of cutoff, and then it will sound like this. So you could directly paste the same bass line as you just created into it, which would sound like this. However, this is more of a future bounce kind of feel that you get from this. So you're going to create a distinctive pattern, which is more of a complement to your main bass. So I came up with this pattern, and together with the bass, you can immediately hear what I mean with complementing each other. They are kind of playing the same notes and kind of playing the same rhythm. However, it just makes it all a bit more groovy and a bit more interesting for the listener. It's important in your mix that you really let the sub bass function as a sub bass, and in this case I'm doing that with a high cut filter on it, and at the same time the supporting bass layer with the fifth in it shouldn't have all those sub frequencies, and I also added some grit with a Fruity Blood overdrive, and then together it just sounds really full. Of course, also don't forget about some sidechain, which you can do pretty hard, as it can actually contribute to the groove with this ducking effect. So that's basically it for the sub bass and the supporting bass layer, the most important part of this style. So now we're moving on to a top lead, And once again, we want to use a top lead with a fifth in it. This perfect fifth is just really a distinctive thing in the sound of Chris Stussy, and you just hear it coming back in all of his tracks. So I found this lead in Dimension, which is a pretty unique lead like this. Just two random wavetables right here with some filtering, some noise and some bit crush on it. A lot of potential to get this really housey top lead on top of it. So I came up with this melody on top of the rest, which sounds like this. As you can see, it's partly following the groove of the bass line, but it also has some notes in between, and this adds a lot of extra groove as well. So these two notes are like new or extra, and then the rest it's literally following the other fifth bass that we did already. And then together that sounds really groovy and really full already. And as you might notice, I left some room in between here because the style is really notable for using a lot of various elements like chord, top plugs, and then just creating a lot of variation in your track, which makes it even more groovy. So we're also going to move on to these elements right now. And first of all, we can move on to a top plug. So for the top plug, I will be using this sound called plug slack. And it's just a really simple plug from our Resonate pack. And the main part of the sound is that it's really short and snappy. And this allows you to create these fast rhythms in your MIDI without really making the sound too prominent, but it will only contribute to the groove. For example, a really simple melody playing on the root note of the track with a nice groove will already do a lot, which sounds like this. So this kind of creates a question and an answer between the top lead and the top plug. So you really need to make sure that if you're adding all these elements to your track, it should actually correspond to each other. So this is kind of the question. And if you think about it that way, it won't sound too random. So both on the plug and the lead, I added some really simple processing, like a delay which is set to ping pong mode, a bit of reverb, just on 10%, and then a EQ with a low cut and some boost in the high frequencies. And then there's one more element that we want to add in the drop, and that's like a jazzy chord step synth. And I found this one in our pack Resonate, and it sounds like this. And normally the attack in the sound wasn't that high and it sounded like this. But I want to use it more as like a filler chord in the drop, so I just increased the attack of envelope 2. And now you can simply let it play the root note of your track, for example, in this case, an F sharp. And perhaps we can change the arrangement a little bit. So let's put that like this. Now you have first the top lead, then the top plug, and then the step, and those are basically all the main elements of the drop and basically of the whole track, because most of the arrangement will just be leaving out certain parts and bringing them back in, which is a very common technique used by a lot of house artists. Of course, a low cut on it and some sidechain as well, and together those sound like this. Really groovy, really spacey, and just overall capturing the vibe of a real Chris Stussy track. For the drums, you can keep it really simple, but make sure it sounds kind of glitchy, which in this case is done by using like those glitchy loops from our Dimension pack. That just adds a lot to the sound. And then for the rest, just some groovy drums, like some heads, rides and a kick, and that sounds like this. Of course you can add some variation into the sound, but I wouldn't recommend to add too much drum layers, as all those synth elements are already kind of taking up a lot of space. So the drums can be really simple, but don't underestimate the importance that they have for your overall groove. Now just add some analog noise and some down filters, and then you basically have your whole drop and you can start arranging. Alright, so right here we have a simple example of how you could arrange a track like this. And the main part that I already told you is that this arrangement is about leaving out certain elements or creating slight variations and then slowly building towards a drop where you have all the elements layered together. For example, you can start with just the bass line and the fifth bass. However, the fifth bass is not yet playing all of the notes that it will do later on. So you create some kind of anticipation. People already hear that the sound is coming, but you don't give them all of it yet. Layering it together with the drums sounds like this. And for example, here I also made the open head shorter, and then later on in the drop it opens up more. And these are just all these tiny variations that keep it interesting while not making it overcomplicated. So as you can see here, slowly you're also teasing the top lead. You bring in the top plug. Then here a little break / build up part where you remove the sub bass and you introduce the melody. I also added some simple Rhodes chords, just playing the root note to kind of give it a bit more of a break feeling. And then you can actually start playing the drop already once again. As you can hear, I also added this little vocal on top of it, which is just really subtle, but it sounds really nice. And then another arrangement trick is to just create really slight variations in your bass line. For example, here with the fifth bass, I just do one slight variation like this. But it just gives something new to the listener, because of course this music is quite repetitive. So a change like this will already do like a great job in keeping it more interesting. Then last but not least, I use the same plug as the top plug, playing like a very groovy fast melody like this. So my tip is to really just have the groove ready and then start creating melodies like this, as it just makes it much easier. And those were basically already all the elements for this track. The elements itself are not complicated at all. However, you should just make sure that you put them together in a well thought manner so it doesn't sound too random. So as I told you already, keep in mind that question and answer theory that most of you probably already know about. So I will now play the final result once again. Alright, so if you guys have any questions or suggestions about the project, leave down a comment down below. As I showed you in the video, most of the sounds are from our sample packs, which you can check out in the link in the description. We have plenty of tech and minimal house packs available, so if you want to get started with some good quality sounds right away, make sure to check that out. Leave a like and subscribe. And for now, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I see you guys in the next video.